Whether you're changing needles to go from a thinner fabric to a thicker fabric, you haven't changed them in a while, or you're going from a 3-thread to a 4-thread or back the other direction. I'm going to show you a few tricks and tips to know about putting needles into a serger. So on these needles, there is still the flat side that needs to go to the back. And with serger needles, keep in mind that the left needle is always higher than the right needle. So by looking at them when they're both in the machine, you can tell if they're the same height, one of them is not all the way up to its highest position. That is something that people do run into with sergers. Now, right now there's only one needle in, so it's hard to tell. Do I have that needle all the way to the highest position? You would only know if you do if you go ahead and put that second needle in and make sure that they are truly the left one higher than the right one. Now, you will find that kind of getting your fingers in here, and it's a lot of small areas for most of our fingers. So remember the optional needle threaders I was showing you? Some of them have an end point right here that you can kind of drop the needle point into, and this can help you bring the needle up into the highest position. See how I can hold this way out in front? And by the way, if you are using this, you cannot use it from this side because otherwise there's not enough room. Bring it right in front, and then the needles, if you look from this side right here, you're going to notice that your needles are actually slanted towards you. Hard to tell when you're sitting in front of the serger, but from this side you're like, oh yeah, they are slanted. So do keep in mind as you're sliding this up, it's going right beside the other needle. I'm going to hold this here, take my screwdriver. Remember when I took out the needle from before, I tightened up the top screw. So we're going to need to unscrew that enough so that with a little pressure on what I'm holding the needle with, it will just pop right up to the top. So here we go, there it is, not too far out because those screws are fairly sharp. All the way up to the highest point, I can see that those needle tips are no longer even, and then I'm going to tighten that down. I do have to say, on the Husqvarna Viking Amber S100 Serger here, I am thankful to having 2 screws here. Now, not all sergers have 2 needle screws. It is something that once you have, you're like, oh, of course you should have them. But not all sergers do. Some of them just have 1 single screw, so you undo it and they both fall out. And then you're always kind of fumbling, trying to hold 2 needles. So this is actually a luxury, a left needle and a right needle screw. Sometimes when I go to change needles or go from an inside 3-thread needle setup, we're using the right needle, and going to a left one, I'll put the left one in, check the height, then remove the right one. So it's always a good idea to kind of figure out, are you where you're supposed to be? If stitches are not turning out great, this would be a great place to double check that your needles are new, the right type for the fabric, and that they are properly inserted all the way as high as they can go. So keep in mind, always put some new needles in, change them out frequently, and double check the height every time you sit down to serge.